I never would have expected to come back from vacation to have to go back to talking about paddles. But we've gone from ho-hum Kickstarter to people trying to auction off old paraphernalia for $1,000. Full disclosure, I'm going to be calling some people idiots. If you haven't heard about it yet or you want the latest update, strap in and let's talk about the relaunch of the YAOI paddle. The story so far. A few days ago, a guy in the UK launched a Kickstarter campaign to bring out a new run of the classic YAOI paddle, as made famous by Hendane here in the States. Anime News Network picked it up shortly thereafter, and importantly, so did Hendane. They issued this statement in response to the Twitter announcement of the campaign. And then just last night, the Kickstarter campaign, despite hitting its goal within 2 days, experienced a problem. An email was sent out alerting backers that an intellectual property dispute for the campaign had occurred, and the page wouldn't be available for a little bit. I had the chance to talk directly to the Kickstarter guy earlier today for some additional info, and here we are. Time for another analysis from a white guy on YouTube. Hendane probably has no legitimate basis to do anything about this paddle relaunch. How can you say that, Mr. Panda? We can skip over a few minor aspects, but as someone who owns a few designs and trademarks, I know a decent bit about intellectual property law. Also, I literally investigated bringing back YAOI paddles years ago. Back burner project. Anyway, as usual, a lot of commentary on Twitter has focused on copyright issues of the design. So let's look at a paddle. You and I together. I covered the background of the paddles in an earlier video that you're welcome to go watch. There are essentially 3 versions of the Hendane paddle. As far as I know, this is the most common one, which I like to call version 2. And people keep talking about copyright this and copyright that, but the problem is copyright covers original creations that fit certain criteria. Things that aren't subject to copyright include words and short phrases. Fonts also aren't copyrightable. Keep that in mind. So what is on this paddle that is copyrightable? Figured it out yet? Nothing! Allow me to use a comparative example from our own catalog. Some of you know that at certain cons we market a special tank top that includes the phrase, "Come in me bro," along with a artsy backsplash. There are other outlets that make a t-shirt with various forms of "Come in me bro" printed on them. And unless I went through a lot of trouble and literally made an entire brand of t-shirts or clothing or apparel with that term as the marketing ploy, there's not really anything I can do about that. I don't want to anyway. The only reason our design is subject to copyright is that, in addition to the phrase, in impact font, it includes an original design that isn't just wording on a thing. But Hendane's name is on it, you say? Well, yes, that's actually one of the points I like to highlight. The only thing about this paddle with potential intellectual property implications is Hendane's name, and that has nothing to do with copyright. It should be obvious that you can't put another company's name on a product in most cases. That could get you in trouble on basis of things like fraud or passing off, and Hendane's name isn't going to be on this paddle. It's one of the first things noted on the Kickstarter. This is a good time to mention a historical footnote. The guy who is documented as making the first YAOI paddle has maintained that Hendane kind of just took his idea and ran off with it. He's pretty clear about it on his DeviantArt, that he got shafted. And that's what makes Hendane's claim so silly, because they also benefited from this lack of copyrightable aspects in the paddle design. There's certainly no evidence that they were paying royalties as if they thought it was a copyrighted design. Hendane's own actions suggest they know full well someone could have churned these out on their own at any time. Usually a design patent would be the most obvious way to protect a useful instrument like a paddle. The words printed on it would have no impact on that though. But in any case, Hendane doesn't have one. And since I spoke with at least 3 different Chinese manufacturers who use this paddle spec, I'm guessing no one does. Another way the paddle might have gotten protection is through trademark, which might consist solely of a word or a phrase as long as it can be readily associated with a single source who offers the product or service. Hendane doesn't have that, and I'm not entirely convinced they could have gotten one without further adjustments to the design. But even if they had, it would have lapsed by now, because non-use of a trademark means you lose it. I mentioned earlier that there were 3 versions of this. The third one looked identical, except Hendane put their logo and name here on the base, on the handhold as well, which to me further signals their awareness of the IP situation and their need to make it clear who was selling you this paddle. Other people are known to have churned out a couple from time to time over the years. The window of the paddle's golden era was so short that I'm really not surprised that Hendane didn't really feel any interest in obtaining more IP protection. Like, I get that argument. To them, it just wasn't profitable to market it a different way, even though they totally could have. When people can't buy the old used ones, they tend to make their own. And even a couple people on Etsy have marketed otherwise identical paddles, even if the shape and everything is different. But we already went over that. The shape of the paddle is not subject to copyright. So to recap, there is no patent or trademark related to this paddle. There is probably nothing that is copyrightable about it. Even if there were, Hendane is not the most likely holder of any claim to the design. Which brings us to motivations. And all I can say is, who the hell knows? Maybe all the retrospective talk about paddles had them thinking about finally bringing it back on their own. If so, great. There is literally no better response you could have than just relaunching your own product. Oh, but since your bogus copyright claim says the paddle being sold would hurt your image, I'm guessing that's not your plan. At least, I'm assuming that's not your plan. I guess we'll see. So that's where we are right now. If you have any thoughts about this, in particular, if you are a backer of the project, feel free to let me know in the comments. That's all I got for now, everybody, so thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.